Okay, so today we're gonna dive into a topic that I think pretty much all of us deal with, and that is workplace relationships.
Yeah.
And we spend so much time at work. It's kind of inevitable that we're gonna end up, forming some sort of bonds with the people that we see every day. But are those people actually our friends, or are they just colleagues?
Right.
And so today we've got two really interesting sources that we're going to look at that kind of approach this topic from totally different angles.
Okay.
The first one is, we'll just call it eingefügter text.
Yeah.
But it's this really, I think, funny and kind of skeptical look at the whole idea of office friendships.
Yeah.
And then the second source is from like a coach or mentor who's giving advice on why it's so important to set boundaries at work.
Interesting.
So our goal is to unpack both of these viewpoints, and hopefully you'll walk away from this deep dive with a clearer understanding of how to manage these relationships effectively
I like it.
and how to protect yourself professionally and personally without feeling like you have to, shut everyone out.
Right.
So let's jump right in.
All right.
So this first piece, eingefügter text, it kind of takes aim at this automatic assumption that we all have. That just because we work with people that we're all buddies. It's like, oh, we're all in this together.
Yeah.
But they present this picture where actually everybody is mostly just focused on, getting through their day.
Yeah, just trying to survive.
Surviving. Yeah, getting their work done.
Get those deadlines.
And so, to them, this whole idea that deep and meaningful friendships can blossom in that kind of environment is, well, it's kind of a joke.
It is kind of funny when you think about it that way.
Yeah, it is.
Like you're in the trenches together, but are you really friends?
Right, exactly.
And that the example they give about, Karen from accounting on Monday morning.
Oh, yeah.
Like the second you walk in the door, she's like, where are those TPS reports? Yeah.
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 That's a good point. Would a real friend do that to you?
Yeah, right. Or would they be a little more understanding,
Exactly. Would they cut you a little slack?
A little slack.
Especially on a Monday morning.
Yeah.
And that, it really makes you think, right?
It does.
Have you ever been in a situation at work where somebody who you thought was, pretty friendly,
Mm-hmm.
they totally prioritized a work demand over any kind of personal consideration for you?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
Especially as you get, more senior in a role.
Right.
It's like the deadlines are the deadlines and we got to hit them. So
Yeah, exactly. It's
yeah.
like those are the moments when the illusion of friendship kind of shatters.
Yeah, it's tested for sure.
And you see the reality of, okay, this is a workplace
Uh-huh.
and we're all here to, do our jobs first and foremost.
Right.
So then this piece goes on to talk about, team building exercises and after work happy hours.
Mm.
And they call them these sacred rituals of office bonding.
Oh, God.
But they're being totally sarcastic, of course.
Of course, yeah.
They're basically saying that these things are often just super awkward
Yeah.
and forced, and everybody would rather be somewhere else.
Like I'm just thinking back to, the holiday party.
Oh, God.
Where you're trapped talking to Barry from marketing.
But you're I don't care about Barry.
I don't care.
At all.
And I don't want to talk about his, fantasy football league. But I'm stuck here.
Exactly. And it's is that really building any kind of genuine bond between, you and Barry or Greg from accounting?
Right.
It's or is it just this weird performance that we all have to go through?
We all have to go through it, yeah.
We're all just playing roles.
Yeah, and the company thinks they're doing something good.
Exactly.
For morale,
Right. It's supposed to be this morale booster.
Yeah.
But I think they're actually pointing out that it can kind of have the opposite effect.
Right, because now not only do I have to do my work, I have to pretend to like the people I work with.
Exactly.
That's a whole other job.
Yeah. And that brings us to this whole other potential minefield, which is office confidences.
Ooh, yeah, that's a big one.
This piece really cautions against oversharing with colleagues.
Right.
Because, let's face it, there's always the risk of gossip in any office environment.
Absolutely.
Anything you say can and probably will be used against you.
In the court of public opinion.
Right, exactly.
Water cooler.
Yeah, the water cooler, the break room.
The break room.
And they tell this story about, somebody who confided in Jeff from IT.
Oh, no, not Jeff.
Yeah.
He seems nice.
Just kind of casually complaining about the printer.
Oh, yeah, the printer's always messing up.
Always messing up, right. And then the next day they overhear their conversation, totally distorted and exaggerated, being spread around the break room as the latest gossip.
Oh, classic Jeff.
Yeah.
Well, he means well.
I know.
But But he loves to talk.
He loves to talk.
He just can't help himself.
And so it's just this reminder that even like small, seemingly insignificant things that you say can be twisted and, turned into something completely different and then spread around.
And then everyone's got an opinion on it.
Yeah, and then everybody has an opinion. You're like, I didn't even mean it like that.
Right.
So have you ever had that experience where you shared something personal with a colleague and then like instantly regretted it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Big time.
It's that feeling of like, oh my gosh, why did I just, put myself out there like that?
Right. Why did I think that this was a safe space
Exactly.
to share?
Yeah, and it kind of makes you question, like, who can you really trust at work?
Right. Who's actually got your back?
Exactly.
And who's just, waiting for you to mess up so they can, get ahead.
Yeah, and that leads us to this other tricky aspect of workplace relationships, which is office politics.
Ooh. Yeah, the drama.
Oh, yeah, the drama.
It never ends.
It never ends. And so this piece argues that because workplaces are inherently competitive,
Right.
Everybody's trying to get promoted and get recognized and get ahead, that can really damage even what seem like, solid relationships because it turns colleagues into competitors.
Yeah. It's like you're all on the same team, but you're also all kind of vying for the same limited resources.
Exactly.
And recognition.
And they use this metaphor, which I thought was really funny, about colleagues sharpening their metaphorical knives behind your back.
I love that.
Right.
It's so visual.
Yeah, it is.
Like you could just picture it.
And then they also give this example of like the regifted fruitcake at the Secret Santa exchange.
Oh, no.
Right? Which is just like this little symbol of, how insincere some of these relationships can be.
Yeah, like, do you even know me?
Right.
If you're giving me a fruitcake that you got from somebody else.
Exactly.
But how little effort did you put into this?
And I think that's kind of their point, right? Like, it's not always about genuine connection. It's often about, just kind of going through the motions. And so have you ever seen or like experienced yourself a shift in workplace relationship?
Oh, yeah.
Because of competition or office politics?
All the time.
Yeah.
It's like the alliances change overnight.
It's like one day you think you're on good terms with somebody, and then the next day it's like
your public enemy number one.
Your public enemy number one. And you're like, what happened?
Right.
So, okay, now let's switch gears a little bit and talk about this second source.
Okay.
Which is coming from more of like a coaching and mentoring perspective. And it's all about the importance of setting boundaries at work.
So interesting.
And I think if we kind of connect this back to that first piece, that was all about the risks of, assuming that everybody at work is your friend. This is like, okay, so given that that's the case, how do you actually protect yourself?
Right. How do you navigate that minefield?
Exactly.
Without getting blown up?
Yeah.
Metaphorically.
Yeah. So the expert here really emphasizes the importance of protecting your personal and professional well-being.
Right.
Through clear boundaries.
Boundaries are everything.
Yeah. And one of the key areas that they talk about is protecting your personal information. Like they say that oversharing about your family, your weekend, plans, your personal goals.
Yeah.
That can actually be really risky. Because even if your colleague, seems trustworthy and has good intentions.
Right.
That information could potentially be used against you.
Yeah, down the line.
Yeah.
Like you never know.
You never know.
What's going to happen. And people change.
Right.
And situations change. And
things get misconstrued and
misinterpreted.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So their advice is basically to stick to work-related topics. Talk about projects and challenges and goals.
Keep it professional.
Yeah, keep it professional. Keep your personal life separate.
And that's hard.
It is hard.
Especially when you're spending, 40 plus hours a week with these people.
Right.
It's natural to want to, share a little bit about your life outside of work.
Exactly. But I think what they're saying is just be really mindful about how much you share.
Yeah, and who you share it with.
And who you share it with, because you never know.
You really don't.
So think about your own workplace. Like how much personal information gets shared.
Yeah.
Just in general. And are there any potential, like even unlikely, but potential consequences?
Right. You're setting yourself up for something down the line.
Exactly. And then this expert also makes this really important distinction between professional courtesy and genuine friendship.
Okay.
They say that those two things should not be confused.
Right.
At work.
Because one's real and one's just for work.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
So, of course, being polite and considerate and collaborative.
Those are all good things.
Those are all good things.
Yeah. You want to be a good colleague.
You want to be a good colleague.
But that doesn't mean you have to be best friends with everybody.
Right?
You're not going to invite them to your wedding,
Exactly.
you know?
And I think they make this point that, like, work is primarily about, collaboration,
Right.
sharing
Getting
schemes,
stuff done.
problem solving.
Yeah. Achieving the company's goals.
Exactly.
That's what you're there for.
It's not primarily a social gathering.
Right.
Right.
And I think that's a really important thing to remember because it helps you to kind of keep things in perspective
It does.
and to not get too emotionally invested
Exactly.
in these relationships
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, it is a job.
Yeah.
And you're there to do a job.
When you're there to do a job. And so how do you personally kind of differentiate between extending professional courtesy
Yeah.
and, like, engaging in genuine friendship at work?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
It's a tough one.
I mean, I think it's about being mindful of, how much you're sharing,
Right.
how much you're socializing outside of work,
Mm-hmm.
and just being aware of the potential for, conflict
Yeah.
and drama. Because let's face it,
It's there.
it's always there.
It's always lurking.
Lurking.
Yeah.
So this expert then goes on to emphasize the importance of just like generally maintaining professional, ethical, and cordial relationships
Right.
with colleagues and, business partners.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's like that reminder that professionalism doesn't automatically equal friendship.
Exactly.
It's about respect.
Right.
It's about boundaries.
And they give this really interesting example of, like, the concept of saving face in some Asian cultures
yeah, that's a good word.
as a way to illustrate, the importance of maintaining professional dignity
Mm-hmm.
and not, overstepping boundaries.
Right.
And I thought that was a really interesting point because it shows that, our understanding of workplace relationships can be shaped by cultural factors.
For sure.
So what might be considered totally normal and appropriate in one culture
Right.
might be seen as, like, completely out of line in another culture.
Right.
So I thought that was a good reminder to be sensitive to those differences.
It's about being aware of the context
Exactly.
and the norms.
And then this expert, they also offer this kind of, like, sobering but maybe necessary reminder to always look out for yourself.
Okay.
And they point out that, in times of crisis or, like, when jobs are on the line,
Mm-hmm.
colleagues are likely to prioritize their own well-being and their own careers.
Self-preservation.
Exactly. It's a natural instinct.
And so they're not saying to be paranoid or distrustful of everyone,
Right.
but just to be aware that, people's priorities can shift
Yeah.
when push comes to shove.
When the pressure's on.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so have you ever been in a situation where like workplace dynamics just totally changed
Oh, yeah.
because of some kind of external pressure?
Absolutely.
Like, potential layoffs or
Well, it's
restructuring.
like all of a sudden, everybody's got their own agenda.
Yeah.
And they're not afraid to, throw you under the bus to save themselves.
Yeah.
There's a little bit dog eat dog.
It can be. Yeah, it can get ugly.
And I think that's when you really see, like, okay, who are the people who are truly,
Who's really got your back?
who's really got my back?
Yeah.
And who's just looking out for number one?
Right.
So this expert also advises against getting too emotionally involved
Okay.
in your colleagues' personal lives.
Right.
And they use this analogy of, like, be Switzerland
Be
neutral.
Switzerland neutral. I love that.
Right.
It's so clear.
Yeah, it is.
Like you're not taking sides.
You're not taking sides. You're not getting involved in the drama.
You're just there to do your job.
You're just there to do your job.
And observe
And eat chocolate.
and eat chocolate. Exactly.
So how do you personally, like, balance empathy
Mhm.
with that professional distance?
Yeah, it's a tightrope walk.
It is a tightrope walk.
You want to be supportive,
Right.
but you also don't want to get sucked into, somebody else's problems that
Exactly.
you can't solve.
Especially if they're, like, constantly bringing their drama to work.
Well, yeah, then you got to set some boundaries.
Yeah. And then finally, this expert really emphasizes the importance of prioritizing your own professional growth and development. And they remind us that, while we all work together,
Right.
everybody's got their own ambitions.
Their own path.
And their own priorities.
Yeah, we're all ultimately in it for ourselves.
Right.
As much as we like to think we're a team.
Yeah. And so their advice is to, like, not lose sight of your own career goals.
Right.
And to keep learning and keep growing.
Keep investing in yourself.
Keep investing in yourself.
Because nobody else is going to do it for you.
Exactly.
Right.
And so it really does kind of shift the focus back to your own individual journey within this larger professional landscape.
Yeah.
So think about, how your workplace relationships either support or maybe distract from your own long-term career goals.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that we should all ask ourselves periodically.
Okay, so now let's bring in this third perspective,
Yeah.
which is from a Forbes article. And this one acknowledges that, as humans, we have this fundamental need for connection.
Right.
Even at work.
We're social creatures.
We are.
We need to feel like we belong.
Yeah, and so they point out that, having positive relationships at work can actually be really beneficial.
Right.
It can make you more engaged.
Yeah, you're happier to go to work.
Happier to go to work, more productive.
More productive.
Yeah, and it just contributes to a more supportive and enjoyable work environment overall. However, they immediately follow that up with a warning.
Yeah.
Which is that navigating these close relationships at work can be a total minefield.
Well, mine knew
Because
that.
there's always that potential for competition and, overstepping boundaries.
Of things getting messy.
Yeah, and they give this really stark warning, which is your coworkers are not your friends.
Whoa.
Yeah, and they say this not to be cold or anything, but as a necessary boundary.
Yeah, a guideline.
Yeah, a guideline to protect yourself.
Protect yourself.
While still, maintaining good working relationships.
Right, because you don't want to be the office hermit.
Exactly. You don't want to be the office hermit.
But you also don't want to be the office gossip.
You don't want to be the office gossip.
Or the one who's always getting caught up in drama.
Right.
So it's a balance.
It is a balance.
It's a fine line.
And so this article goes on to detail all of the risks that come with letting those workplace relationships get too close.
Okay.
Or too personal.
Lay it on me.
And they're pretty serious.
All right.
So here we go.
I'm ready.
Okay. So first of all, there's the risk of accusations of favoritism.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
If you're seen as being too close to your boss.
Right. Or if you're giving preferential treatment.
Or if you're giving preferential treatment
to your buddies.
To your buddies.
Yeah.
Then other people are going to think it's unfair.
Of course.
And it can create a really toxic environment.
It can breed resentment.
Resentment, exactly. And then there's the risk of too much socializing.
Okay.
Which can impact productivity.
Right, because you're spending all your time chatting.
You're spending all your time chatting instead of working.
Instead of working.
And, that can lead to missed deadlines.
Yeah.
And just a general lack of focus.
Right. It's easy to get distracted.
It's easy to get distracted.
Especially if you're having fun with your friends at work.
Right. And then there's the potential for relationships to get really strained if you're competing with colleagues for promotions or raises.
Yeah, because now it's personal.
It's personal, and it can be really hard to separate that personal relationship from the professional competition.
Yeah, and then friendships end.
Friendships end.
And then you're stuck working with this person that you hate.
That you hate.
It's awkward.
It's so awkward.
It's the worst.
And then, of course, there's the risk of personal information being used against you.
Right, we talked about that before.
Which we talked about before, but it's worth repeating. Absolutely.
Because it can happen so easily.
Yeah, you let your guard down.
You let your guard down, you say something.
You trust somebody.
You trust somebody.
And then they betray that trust.
When they betray that trust, and it's like...
Ugh, the worst.
The worst.
It's the worst.
And then there's the risk of misunderstandings.
Okay.
Escalating into formal allegations.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, if you're joking around with somebody.
Right.
And they take it the wrong way.
Yeah.
Or if you're just trying to be helpful. But it comes across as you're trying to micromanage them or something.
Right.
Things can get out of hand really quickly.
Yeah. And then HR gets involved.
HR gets involved.
And nobody wants that.
Nobody wants that.
And then the whole office knows your business.
And then the whole office knows your business. And it's why?
It's just a nightmare.
And then finally, there's the risk of just creating a really uncomfortable and potentially toxic team environment.
Okay.
If friendships sour.
Right. Because now you've got these factions. You've got factions.
And everybody's taking sides.
And everybody's taking sides, and it's like high school all over again.
Ugh. I thought we were done with that.
I know, me too.
It's the worst parts of high school, but at work.
But at work, where you can't escape it?
Exactly. You're trapped.
You're trapped.
So have you witnessed any of these, negative consequences?
Oh, yeah.
In your own experience?
Big time.
Okay, tell me everything.
I mean, I've definitely seen friendships fall apart.
Okay.
At work.
Yeah.
And it's so uncomfortable.
It's so uncomfortable.
Because you feel like you have to pick a side.
Right. Or at least people assume you're picking a side.
Right.
Even if you're just trying to stay neutral.
And it's like, I just want to do my job
Yeah.
and go home.
And not get involved in this drama.
Exactly.
So it sounds like this Forbes article is basically saying, like, proceed with caution.
Yes. Proceed with caution.
When it comes to workplace friendships.
Workplace friendships, yes.
So what's their advice?
So their advice is basically to, like, be intentional about setting boundaries.
Okay.
And they give some really concrete tips.
Right, yeah, me.
Okay, so first of all, they say prioritize your work-related goals.
Mm-hmm.
Like, remember why you're there.
You're there to do a job.
You're there to do a job.
Yeah, not to make friends.
Right, and then they say be really careful about the personal information that you share.
Okay, yeah, we've heard that before.
We've heard that before, but it's important.
It's worth repeating.
It's worth repeating. And then they say stay out of office, politics, and gossip.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Like, just don't get involved.
Don't engage. Don't engage.
Be Switzerland.
When it comes to the drama.
Exactly. And then finally they say never, ever talk badly about other colleagues.
Okay, yeah, that's a good rule for life in general.
It is a good rule for life.
Just be kind.
Be kind.
You know.
And so they also emphasize the importance of, like, open and honest communication about boundaries.
Okay.
So if you feel like somebody's overstepping a boundary, you know, don't be afraid to say something.
Right, like, hey, can we keep this professional?
Yeah.
Or like, I'm not comfortable talking about this.
Or like, hey, can we talk about this later?
Yeah.
Like when we're not at work.
Right.
You know?
Like, I don't want to get HR involved.
Exactly. And they also suggest, like, setting limits on after-work socializing.
Okay.
So, you know, if you're not really close friends with your colleagues,
Yeah.
you don't have to go to every happy hour.
Yeah, you don't have to be best friends with everybody.
Exactly. You don't have to be best friends with everybody.
You could just be friendly.
You can just be friendly.
And cordial.
And cordial.
And respectful.
And respectful.
And professional.
And professional.
Right.
So what are some boundaries that you think you could implement or reinforce in your own workplace?
I mean, I think for me, it's really about being more mindful of what I share.
Okay.
You know, and with who.
Right.
Because I think I have a tendency to be like an open book.
Yeah.
And I just assume that everybody has good intentions.
Right.
But that's not always the case.
It's not always the case.
So I think I need to be a little more guarded.
Yeah.
A little more Switzerland.
A little more Switzerland.
You know, just protect myself.
Protect yourself.
A little bit more.
So if we kind of take a step back and look at all three of these sources.
Okay.
You know, the skeptical view from Angefictor text,
Yeah.
the expert advice on boundaries, and the Forbes article,
Yeah.
I think there's this really clear message that emerges.
What is it?
Which is that while it's great to have positive relationships at work,
Right.
it's really important to not mistake those relationships for true friendships,
Yeah.
like the kind of friendships that you have outside of work.
With people who you choose to spend time with.
Right.
Not people who you're forced to spend time with.
Exactly.
8 hours a day, 5 days a week.
Because at work, there's always this potential for conflict
Yeah.
and competition.
And backstabbing.
Backstab.
And just general unpleasantness.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful.
So setting boundaries is really about protecting yourself
It is.
from all of that.
Protecting your heart.
Protecting your heart.
Your sanity.
It's your career.
Your career.
All of it.
All of it.
Yeah.
And so the goal isn't to like go to work and make a bunch of best friends.
Right.
It's to do your job.
Do your job. Learn. Grow.
And succeed.
And succeed.
Without getting caught up in all the drama.
Right.
So to wrap up today's deep dive,
Okay.
remember to be mindful of that distinction
Mm-hmm.
between colleagues and true friends.
Colleagues and friends.
Yeah.
Two different things.
Two different things. And prioritize those professional boundaries.
Yes. Boundaries are key.
Boundaries are key.
Protect yourself.
Protect yourself and be careful about the personal information you share.
Right.
And most importantly, keep your focus on your own professional growth
Yeah.
and development.
That's what really matters at the end of the day. It is, because that's what's going to stay with you.
Exactly.
No matter where you go.
Your career is your career.
Your career is your career.
Your friends come and go.
Your friends come and go.
But your career is always there.